Today's lesson is, should teenagers be banned from social media? Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And our topic for today, as it was last time, is all about social media. And should we prevent teenagers from using social media? Should their rights be infringed upon so that they can progress in other areas of their lives? This conversation kind of goes back and forth all the time. I suppose modern teenagers are kind of surprised that people are actually asking this question. They take this privilege for granted. Of course I should use social media. What do you expect me to do? Go out and play basketball or go hiking or something like that? That is silly. I need to be on social media because it's so important.
Absolutely. It does sort of feel like one of those problems that it's a bit maybe too late to fix. I think part of the other thing is that we've let the social media companies like Facebook and Twitter or X as it's known, we've kind of let them post things, or we've let them sort of set their own rules about what is acceptable and what is not acceptable on the internet, and too much of them and the algorithms they create are pushing the more unacceptable stuff that keep people watching but aren't necessarily good for people, especially for young growing brains, and sort of forcing those companies to limit themselves seems like a difficult thing to do now. But we do probably need to do something. Every couple of weeks we see another story about a young person taking their own life or someone being bullied into doing something terrible, and it can definitely have really devastating effects on both the kids and their families, and it isn't something I think that we can just turn a blind eye to and ignore. But there are no easy solutions here. It's not an easy problem to figure out. But hearing all these different opinions is very, very educational. So let's get back to it. First up, we have Ray. He is a politician, so he will have a legislator's point of view. Let's listen to that. D. Ray, 50. Legislator. Enforcing a social media ban would be counterproductive and nearly impossible. We don't need a ban. We need to focus on smarter solutions. Better content controls and encouraging teens to get outside more would be a good start.
大家好，第一部分介绍动词 enforce， 指强制实施、执行或是迫使。例如 The new school president enforces all of the rules. 新校长强制执行了所有规范。或者 In this town, the police enforce the traffic laws quite strictly. 在这座城上，警方非常严格地执行交通法规。
Okay, so here's Ray. He's somewhat more advanced in age. He's 50 years old, and he is a legislator. Okay, he could be a representative, he could be a senator or whatever. He works for the government. He has been elected by people in an election, and he says enforcing a social media ban would be counterproductive and nearly impossible. So, of course, he's worked in government, and he probably knows what can be done and what can't be done. Of course, if you're a legislator, you're working with the law. And if you have laws, of course, you want to enforce those laws, which means the police need to catch people committing crimes, and these people need to be punished for their crimes, okay? I would say that it's difficult to enforce traffic laws in Taiwan, especially for scooters, because there's so many of them, so it's difficult to enforce the laws there. But, of course, we want the police and the government to enforce the laws to make sure the laws are being followed by the people.
Yeah, it's true. It's also difficult to enforce the laws because sometimes the drivers will break the law right in front of the police and they won't really do much about it. So you actually have to enforce the law to make people follow the law. It is kind of one of those things. But something is counterproductive, it works badly. It does exactly kind of the opposite of what you want. And that's part of my thinking with this. If you ban something and tell kids they can't do it, often that's the first thing that they now want to do, right? Oh, I can't do that. I can't go there. I can't see this. I can't try this. I absolutely want to try that now, both as a rebellious thing, but now they're just curious about it. Now it just has this certain excitement about it that wasn't there before. So that could be a problem and nearly impossible. Yeah, I've always struggled with this. I mean, they have the phones and the apps are there, and how are we going to stop them from just picking a phone up or getting an 18-year-old brother to register them on Instagram and just use his account or something like that. So I'm not sure how it would actually work. And then Ray goes on to say, we don't need a ban. We need to focus on smarter solutions. So just banning something, saying, no, you can't do that. That for Ray is not effective, not a wise or a smart thing to do. So let's go for smarter solutions, look at it more carefully, and come up with more intelligent ideas that will specifically help this instead of just banning it like we ban kids from drinking alcohol or smoking cigarettes or something. He says better content controls and encouraging teens to get outside more would be a good start. So content controls for the social media companies, things that they can't put on their websites or on their platforms for anybody, not just young people. That might be helpful. And also education. Get kids to understand that there's more to life than scrolling through TikTok videos. Encourage them to go outside and be healthy, run around, play games or something. All of those would be good, but I think people have been trying all of those things, and gosh darn it, social media and their algorithms, they're just so powerful.
Okay, we're at the end of Ray's opinion. Let's move on now to the second part of our lesson. We've got a couple more people to hear from. We've got Sophia, who is a middle school student, and then we've got Grace, who is an advocate for children's rights. Let's hear what they have to say.
Sophia, 14, middle school student.
I've seen evidence for both sides. Social media helps me express myself, but I've also faced cyberbullying. Maybe instead of banning it, we could have stricter rules to make platforms safer for teens. That way, we could still enjoy the good parts of social media without dealing with all the negativity.
Grace, 34, advocate for children's rights. Banning teens from social media takes away their right to freedom of expression. Sure, social media can be harmful, but banning it entirely? We can't make that decision for them. Teens deserve a say in the matter and should be included in discussions about safer online practices.
第二部分看到这个名词 evidence 表示证据或是证明。例如 There is no evidence that Blake threw the paper airplane. 没有证据显示是 Blake 丢纸飞机的。或是 The police are looking for evidence to figure out who set the fire. 警方正在找证据，以得知是谁纵火。接着看到名词 advocate 指拥护者或是提倡者。例如 Bonnie is a fearless advocate for human rights. Bonnie 是一位无所畏惧的人权拥护者。也可以说Although Andrew claims to be an advocate for the environment, he buys lots of plastic products. 虽然 Andrew 声称自己是环境倡导者，但他却买很多塑胶制品。
All right, we are back with the second part of today's article, looking at different opinions about social media bans for young people. We've heard some pretty interesting points of view from different sides of this debate. Now let's go to Sophia. Says she's 14, so I think she's the youngest person that we've heard of. The last one, I believe, was a 16-year-old student. She's a middle school student, so junior high school would be another way of saying that. What does Sophia have to say? She says, I've seen evidence for both sides. Okay, so she isn't really coming down on one side or the other. She's seen evidence and maybe, good arguments from both sides. Evidence is kind of like proof, factual proof. In this case, be in the form of statistics. They might collect data and numbers or do surveys of young people and kind of understand things a little bit more clearly with a little bit more sort of scientific evidence and evidential proof. That's what she's talking about. So what are the things that she's seen that's kind of put her in the middle, makes it hard to really come down on one side or the other? Well, she goes on to say, social media helps me express myself, but I've also faced cyberbullying. So there you go. Two sides to the same coin. It's good for her. It allows her to express herself and write her thoughts and feelings and engage with things that she's interested in on social media, things that might be hard to do without it. But through social media, she has also faced cyberbullying. Cyber meaning coming from the internet specifically, coming from computers and the internet more precisely. And bullying, well, when people tease you, when they're mean to you, when they inflict emotional or physical, but often more emotional damage on you, just because they're mean. And teenagers and young people, of course, can do this. They don't understand the consequences of their actions. They don't have the empathy that older people might have. So being mean to your classmates, laughing at them, calling them names, making fun of differences in them, and just generally making life miserable for those people who are being bullied or teased, and she's faced that as well.
Yeah, we've got regular bullying, like in school or something. Somebody shoves you into a locker or something like that, or they try to embarrass you in front of other people. But this particular kind of bullying is online, and the person who does this is a bully. I guess if they're online, they're a cyber bully. But again, this is something she has faced. She's had this problem before. So yes, she thinks that social media should be controlled to a certain extent. Maybe instead of banning it, we could have stricter rules to make platforms safer for teens. So I guess she says that it's probably impossible to ban social media. It is useful. People do use it, but we still need to have it controlled. We need stricter rules to make those platforms safer for teens. I'm not quite sure what they can do about this, but again, she says there should be stricter rules so that people can be more protected by regulations. And she goes on to say that way we could still enjoy the good parts of social media without dealing with all the negativity. So we could learn from it, we could use it to our advantage, and then we can avoid the negativity, the bad parts.
There you go. Keep the good, get rid of the bad. That would be a great idea, but of course, the devil is in the details. How do you do that? All right, well, maybe Grace, our next person, will have an idea about how to do that. She's 34, so she's an older person. She's a grown-up, and she's an advocate for children's rights. Very interesting. So if you're an advocate for something, that means you're a supporter of something, and an advocate is a very active supporter. You're actually going out there doing things to show your support for an issue in society. If you're an environmental advocate, you're probably going around trying to get politicians to pass laws to protect nature and the environment, or you could be an advocate for the oil companies, and you're out there trying to get fewer laws to protect nature and more opportunities for oil companies to drill oil out of the ground. But basically, you're not actually doing the thing that you're for, but you're trying to help the people who are doing it. You're trying to make life better for people who do it in some kind of way. We often also see this word when used with legal counsel, so it could be about that. You could be a lawyer if you're an advocate, or you can just be a person who's very involved and knowledgeable in the topic that you're sort of working for and fighting to improve or take a few steps in the right direction. So she's trying to help kids with their rights. She's not a kid, but she's fighting on their behalf because, of course, kids can't do this. So what does she say? She says banning teens from social media takes away their right to freedom of expression. Well, they're a very good point. Just because you're young doesn't mean you can't speak your mind and say what you want. In many countries, the freedom to express yourself, the freedom to talk about what you want to talk about and air your opinions, that is a fundamental right in many, many countries. They believe it's the first right in America, in the American Constitution, basically, right? Freedom of expression is right up there at the top. So taking that away from kids, is that a good idea? Sure, she says. Social media can be harmful. She's not saying it's all good out there on the internet. It can bring some bad stuff, but banning it entirely, she says, as a question, is that really what you want to do? So this is kind of going into what Sophia was saying. Can we keep the good stuff about it and get rid of the bad stuff? Because just getting rid of it entirely, surely that would be worse.
Indeed. So she's saying that we are a democracy and we need to promote freedom of speech, freedom of expression. So we should not ban social media like they probably do in North Korea or other places like that. But yeah, we cannot ban it. Maybe we need to control it. But hey, it's up to the teens to decide this for themselves. Everything should be decided on the open market. I guess that's what she's saying. And teens deserve a say in the matter and should be included in discussions about safer online practices. So yeah, we shouldn't make the decision for them. They should be involved in the discussion. And that's what Grace and Sophia have to say about this particular issue. Let's go on now and hear what David and Mia have to say.
G. David, 52, psychologist. Excessive social media use has been linked to mental health issues like depression. Banning it might lead to a net positive result, but real solutions require teaching self-control and resilience in teens.
H. Mia, 39, teacher. Social media can distract students, but it's also a tool for learning and collaboration. Instead of banning it altogether, we should help teens use it responsibly and positively.
第三部分介绍名词 psychologist 表示心理学家。我们可以说 Victor is a psychologist who is researching human emotions. Victor 是个研究人类情感的心理学家。又或者说 The psychologist asked Amber many questions about her childhood. 这位心理学家问了 Amber 许多关于童年的问题。下一个看到形容词 excessive 意思是过度的或是过分的。例如The cookies were wrapped in an excessive amount of packaging. 这些饼干过度包装了。再看一个例子 Eating excessive amounts of sugar can lead to health problems. 吃过多的糖会导致健康问题。继续看到名词 depression 它表示忧郁、抑郁或是忧郁症。可以说 Unable to leave his apartment for weeks, Doug started showing signs of depression. 几个星期不能离开公寓 Doug 开始出现抑郁的迹象。也可以说 A doctor has been helping Gina to manage her depression. 医生一直在帮 Gina 管控她的忧郁症。最后看到 distract 这个单字，它是动词，指的是使分心或是使转移注意力。举例来说 Parents often use toys to distract their children during long car rides. 父母在长途搭车时常用玩具来分散孩子的注意力。或者Kelly was distracted from her work because somebody was playing loud music nearby. Kelly 上班时无法专心，因为附近有人音乐放得很大声。
Okay, so we just heard from David and Mia. David is 52 years old, and he is a psychologist. Okay, he studies psychology. He majored in psychology. He probably has his PhD in psychology, so he's an expert in this field. He says excessive social media use has been linked to mental health issues like depression. So again, if you study psychology, you're all about the mind and how people think and how they behave. A psychiatrist is somebody who actually deals with mental problems that people might have, but a psychologist is more like a counselor. They're probably also a counselor in a certain way in the university or whatever. And he says excessive social media use has been linked to mental health problems. Okay, so if something's excessive, you just get too much of it. You should probably limit your time on your smartphone every day. Yes, you shouldn't have excessive social media use because there is an actual association between that and mental health issues like depression. There are other ones like neurosis or schizophrenia or whatever, but he's saying there is a link. There's a connection between too much phone use and mental health problems like depression.
Yes, depression, anxiety, and then you can get into things like anorexia, where people don't like how they look and things like that. So yeah, many things can come from excessive social media use. That is absolutely true. And of course, young people are often more affected by that. It says banning it might lead to a net positive result, but real solutions require teaching self-control and resilience in teens. So yes, he's kind of saying, well, banning it could be good. It might lead to a net positive result. When you say net positive result, you're kind of saying overall things will be better, but you're not saying everything will be better. You're saying things can be worse, but generally when we take the good and the bad and we kind of put them together and do the math, it was a more positive thing than a negative thing, but this will create problems. I mean, think of all the arguments and fights around the dining room table and the slammed bedroom doors when the parents tell the kids they can't go on social media anymore. That would definitely lead to a lot of stress in certain situations. But he's kind of saying in a more realistic way, if we really want to be smarter about this, real solutions, the better solutions, the hopefully win-win solutions, the net positive solutions, will teach self-control and resilience to teens. Absolutely. Teach teens that just because it's there doesn't mean you should be on it all the time. time, that kind of idea of self-control. You can use it for an hour a day, but that's it, or don't use it at exam time and all that kind of stuff. Having self-control, stopping yourself from doing things even when you really, really want to. That's an important life skill to learn. And also resilience in teens. Just because someone calls you a bad name or teases you, it's not the end of the world. Resilience is kind of like toughness, in other words. You're flexible, you're tough. Things that might break another person might hurt you, might damage you, might be tough to go through, but they're not going to break you. You're going to be strong enough to kind of live through difficult situations and still continue on being a good person without having it affect you in any great negative way. So teach kids to basically be smarter and stronger because it's a tough old world out there.
It is. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there, so be careful. Here's what Mia has to say. She's 39 years old and she is a teacher. She says, social media can distract students, but it's also a tool for learning and collaboration. So it's got good points and bad points. It can distract students. If something distracts you, it means it takes your attention away from what you're supposed to be paying attention to. It could be a distraction. For example, your neighbor pounding on the wall could be a distraction when you're trying to write a report or something. But also, social media could teach you about various topics, but it also teaches you how to collaborate or work together with other people. That's what collaboration is. And she says, instead of banning it altogether, we should help teens use it responsibly and positively. And that sounds very similar to Emma's point of view back in our lesson last time. Yes, she thinks that these kids should use some guidance and not just an all-out ban. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Here comes Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第一部分 Ray 他的看法是执行社群媒体禁令会适得其反，而且几乎办不到。文中他用到 counterproductive 来形容适得其反的，产生反效果的。那它是由 counter 表示反或是逆， productive 是形容富有成效的、多产的，两部分组合在一起变成 counterproductive。好，那这边要介绍这个字首 counter 或者是 contra。那这样的字根呢，带有相反的或是与什么相对的、对应的、复制的那种语义。好，那我们来看看几个带有这一类字首的单字。第一个是 contradict， 它的字首 contra 这部分表示 against 反对，字根 dict 表示 say 或是 speak， 就是有说的意思。那合在一起 contradict 就是表达反驳或是与什么抵触、互相矛盾。第二个补充的是 counteract， 它的字首 counter 这部分表示相反、对立， act 表示行动作用。那对立的行动应该可以联想到 counteract， 它是表达抵消或是对抗的意思。第三个补充的是 counterclockwise， clock 是时钟， wise 这个副词字尾表示以什么什么方式，那合在一起 clockwise 就表示顺时针方向的。我们接着在 clockwise 前面加上字首 counter 表示相反的，那顺时针的相反就是逆时针嘛，所以 counterclockwise 就是逆时针方向的。课文第二部分的 Sophie 她则提到，她看过两边的证据，社群媒体帮助她表达自己，但是她也遭受过网络霸凌。好，文中她用到 evidence 来表达证据、证明。我们来补充一下它的字根，这一类字根 vid、vis 或者是 view， 那它们可以表达观看、观察或是看到。在 evidence 这个字当中，它的字首 e 表示外或是完全，字根 vid 表示看，那么 ence 是名词字尾。那我们可以试着联想，把证据完全摊在外面，摊在大家面前，让大家看得清清楚楚，眼见为凭。那么 evidence 就是指证据、证明。我们顺便补充有这一类字根的单字，第一个是 vision， 它的字根 vis 表示看， ion 是名词字尾，那合在一起 vision 就表示视力、视觉或眼光，它其实还有那种想象啊、展望或是愿景的意思。第二个补充的是 supervisor， 它的字首 super 它表示上方，字根 vis 表示观察， or 是名词字尾，用来表达从事什么什么的人。那从上方来查看的人，应该很容易联想到 supervisor， 他有主管、 监督人或是管理者的意思了。好，那第三个补充的是 preview， 它的字首 pre 表示预先， view 是观看，那预先观看应该可以联想到 preview， 它就有预览、预告、预告片的意思。好，那么以上今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Legislator. A few of the legislators want to make major changes to the country's criminal codes. Enforce. Teachers must enforce classroom rules to maintain order. Evidence. There is growing evidence that regular exercise improves mental health. Advocate. As an advocate for human rights, Dr. Hale often speaks at public events. Psychologist. Simone decided to visit a psychologist to better understand her emotions. Excessive. Eating excessive amounts of sugar can lead to health problems. Depression. Warren sought professional help to manage his depression. Distract. Don't let your phone distract you while driving.
Discussion Starter starts now!
Time now for our discussion starter. The question is, do you think that social media bans for teens are a good idea? Why or why not?
No, I'm going to say no. I think such bans would have more negative than positive effects because if you ban something, then teens will just want to do it more.
Well, I think that they shouldn't think of a ban for this. I think they should actually figure out a way to make kids actually gain weight when they're using their phone, and then when they don't use the phone, they actually lose weight. So that might give them some incentive to control the amount of time they spend on social media. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Mike.
See you next time.